Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Wondergoal Champions League Preview Match Day 6. I'm Anthony DeBundo, hosting in the host chair tonight, filling in for Michael Leboff, who is not here, and joining me to break down most of the 16 matches in the final day of the Champions League is BJ Cunningham, fresh off a weekend off where his underdog failed to get home for us. We came so close yet again. Devastating heartbreak. No underdogs this week for the Champions League, but we do have some fun, tiebreaker scenarios to get into. Who's going to advance? Who's not going to advance? Some of the groups are decided. Some of them, only one spot is clinched. So it should be a really fun couple of matches we have coming up here. But before we get into the matches, remember that Wondergoal is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. It believes that every sport should be epic. Every tournament, every game, every point, every play, from the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today with the code ACTION, and you get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older, must be present in Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, New Jersey, Ohio, or Virginia. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, Kentucky, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia, or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms and conditions apply. There's really only one place to start on Tuesday. It's probably been the most exciting group from top to bottom in this Champions League group outside of the group of death. Copenhagen, Galatasaray, Man United, and Bayern. Let's kind of set the scene here. So Bayern have already clinched. They've won the group pretty comfortably. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to play a decent team, and we'll get into that in a second. Second place scenarios are a little bit tricky. Copenhagen will host Galatasaray. Whoever wins that match will advance. Copenhagen advances with a win. Galatasaray, same. They are currently tied on points. But if they were to draw, Copenhagen would advance unless United pulls off an upset win against Bayern. Then United would advance. So the current odds to advance, Copenhagen minus 125, Galatasaray plus 137, Man United 8-1. So if you wanted to get a little crazy, United to pull a rabbit out of their hat could happen here. It's going to require them beating a team that has not lost in the group stage in many years. BJ, let's start with Copenhagen Galatasaray because that's the more exciting match. I know we both have bets on the next one, but where do you see this match going, and kind of what do we make of Galatasaray now that we've gotten 5 matches to see them in the Champions League, and it's pretty clear they're going for it regardless of the scenario here.
Maybe you can remind me, but I don't think I've ever can remember a team that I've watched that just absolutely thrives in chaos more than Galatasaray. They want chaotic matches. They want transitional back and forth. They want matches to be high scoring. And the scenario that you laid out, obviously Copenhagen with a draw would move on to the round of 16 outside, obviously, of a Manchester United win. So my expectation is that Copenhagen will probably do what they did in the first leg in Turkey, which is they sat pretty deep, and then they just look to counter Galatasaray. But we are in a scenario where Galatasaray has to go for this. They have to win. A draw is not good enough to get through to round 16. So they're going to counter-press quite a bit. They're going to play very aggressively, which is going to leave a lot of space in behind for Copenhagen if they choose to get those transitional moments going forward. I love the over 3 goals here at plus 108. I think it's far too low. Every single match that Galatasaray has played in this group stage has had at least 3 goals scored. Only the Copenhagen match had less than 3 XG in it. And even that match was very, very back and forth. And if you look through some of the other underlying data in that match, Galatasaray just wasn't very clinical in the final third. Yes, they only had 1.1 expected goals, but they had an expected threat of 1.74 and 18 box entries. So if they're going to be on the front foot and they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on Copenhagen, I have no doubt, even though this match is in Denmark, that they are going to get a ton of those chances. But I projected this line pretty close to right around the market has it. But I do have 3.4 goals projected for it. So I love over 3 goals at plus 108. I just don't really see a scenario where this match doesn't divulge into complete chaos.
I mean, look, if you watched the 5th match, they played against United 2 weeks ago. It was actually remarkable because I'm sitting there, we both had the plus a half. Most people had draw no bet. All they needed was a draw to keep themselves in like a really good position to go into the final match day where it's doesn't like matter. You control your own destiny. All you have to do is draw. They get to 3-3, and I'm like, any rational team would dial it back a little bit here and be like, well, let's not be so open. Let's, maybe give some possession to United, look to hit them on the break. But they were not doing that. I mean, United had like 4 or 5 great opportunities that they failed to convert and failed to create. But it was open season for this defense. And their defense is not very good. And I think it's very obvious. No. But the market has also upgraded them. And something very quietly happened during those Bayern matches. They lost both Bayern matches, but they played well enough in both that not only did we not cash our big tickets we were hoping to cash, but the market also simultaneously upgraded them while taking our money. So it was kind of mean because the last 2 matches, there really hasn't been value on Galatasaray at the closing, pick them against United, closing a favorite in that match. Now a slight favorite here. I'm just going to ride with the ticket. I bet Galatasaray all 5 matches in this group stage to varying degrees of success. I think now the market is caught up. Now it's pretty simple, right? We bet them at the beginning of the group stage to advance. They just have to win. So we're ahead right now in our position.
Yep.
The walls could come crumbling down. But again, like you mentioned, like the first 40 minutes of that match in the first leg back in Turkey, way back when in September, they hit the woodwork. Icardi missed a one-on-one. Icardi has been really good at getting chances and really bad at finishing them in this Champions League. And that's been a big problem for them, is that they just haven't had great finishing variance from their guy who takes most of their shots. And as a result, they have not quite, gotten the upsets we thought they could have pulled off. He was not good against United. He got the 1 goal where he was off by like a kneecap. But he did get, 7 shots against Bayern, 3 shots against Bayern, 3 against United, 4 against Copenhagen. He's put up more than 4 expected goals and only has 2, one of which was a pen. So there are some questions about like, is he just like going to have a big game here and finally cash a ticket for us? I hope so.
I hope so too. And I'll tell you this, the bet regret of the century for me is I said it on this podcast before the United match. I said Copenhagen 16-1 to advance, and I just didn't do it. And I just didn't bet it. And now I'm sitting here, and now they're the favorites to advance. So, but that's okay because I think we're in a good position here with Galatasaray. Yeah,
let's hope we can get a win. If there is a draw in this match, the door is open for Man United.
It is.
Who lost over the weekend. I was disappointed that BJ didn't bet my cherries with me. They lost 3-0. They were so back on Wednesday when they beat Chelsea. Performance of the season, 4 expected goals, dominate Chelsea at home. Then they go on the road, or they're home again, look pretty flat. It was a pretty even game on the chances, but Bournemouth up 1-0 inside 5 minutes. Now they're favored, or slight underdog, basically a pick 'em, against Bayern Munich. Now, this match is being played on Tuesday, which means that 6 days before the playing of this match, Chelsea will have went to Man United and been a slightly bigger favorite than Bayern will be on Tuesday when they play this match, assuming the line doesn't move crazily, which I don't expect. Now, you might say, well, there's motivation. Bayern has already clinched the group. No. Let's go back and look at the history of this, because I think we're all aware, we've done the show for a few years. Bayern has already clinched the group prior to the final day multiple times in the last couple of years. Last season, they were playing Inter Milan at home on the final day. Inter needed to pull off a result that they had already clinched. Bayern played everybody. Choupo-Moting started at striker. Kimmich and Sabitzer in the midfield. Coman and Mane as the wingers. They went for it. They won 2-0. 2 years ago, Bayern had already clinched the group. They played Barca on the final day. They started Lewandowski, Muller, Sané, Coman, Musiala, and Tolisso. They are not in the German Cup, which means they didn't play last midweek. I think they would be more inclined to rest people if they had played last match week during the week, where it's like, okay, now we have like 4 matches in 10 days. It's a lot. But they had the week off. They lost to Frankfurt in a terrible showing over the weekend, which should piss them off. And I'm expecting a reaction now, and United might be at the other end of it. Last time Bayern lost a match was to Saarbrücken. They were up 2-0 on Dortmund within 10 minutes the following Saturday. So this Bayern team is considerably better than Chelsea, considerably better than Man United by any metric you look at in the world. And I've been anti-Bayern. And they were kind of flat against Copenhagen. I think that's real. And they really kind of just played that match on cruise control. But that was a team that was a low block who just kind of defended for their lives for 90 minutes and never really offered too much of a threat. United can't do that. They're not capable defensively, and they need to win. So a draw does them no good. There's going to be a ton of space on the counter here for Bayern where they're lethal. They did lose Gnabry to injury, but like I said, it's still going to be, I think, Coman, and they have plenty of wing depth to make it work. So I'm going to be on Bayern. Harry Kane is famous for never sitting. Like this is for me an overreaction to the motivation, and I'm going to take Bayern to winner. I'll take them draw no bet -120.
I mean, has there been a better fade team than United this season? Like
Chelsea.
Chelsea. It's been quite fun. The
Union
previous
Berlin.
match, the previous match in Germany, did end 4-3. But if you look at expected goals, Bayern did have a penalty. From a non-penalty XG standpoint, United actually won the match. But a lot of those chances came when they were already behind 3-1, which I think is important in this scenario because Bayern was consistently creating chances over and over and over again when they were leading in this match because they were up 2-0 inside the first 30 minutes. So we saw what United was like when the pressure was on and they needed to come back, and that was with Casemiro and a lot of other players who are now injured, and they really couldn't do much with it. And here's the problem. If you've watched Man United at all this season, really, they can't build out of the back. Ten Hag is trying these complicated, fluid build-up systems, similar to kind of what Tottenham is trying to do, where it's very fluid. Guys are interchanging, moving around, but they don't have the personnel to do it, and the players get confused. And suddenly, it's like, okay, well, we couldn't really move the ball forward, so let's just send a ball long up to the forwards, and let's just hope for the best. And that's probably their best method of attack here. But if they have to be very aggressive and they have to press Bayern relentlessly and try to win the ball off of them because they obviously need a win here, that is such a dangerous game to play with one of the best teams in the world. I mean, in the first meeting between these two, Bayern had a build-up completion percentage of 91%, and United had a passive defensive action of 15.7. They had their best pressing performance of the season against Chelsea. Bayern is a really, really good build-up team. It is very difficult to get the ball off of them. So I find this being a terrible situation for Manchester United, given they have to be aggressive and put the pressure on Bayern Munich. Like you said, there's going to be so much space on the counter once Bayern gets past that first line of the pressure. So I agree with you. I actually have Bayern, projection systems don't take into account motivation. So if you're looking at my projections or anything like that, some might seem out of whack. Obviously the market adjusts for motivation. This is a motivation adjustment because I have Bayern as a +105 road favorite. And I think if this match actually mattered, they would probably be around -110, -120, given the state where Manchester United is right now. So
yeah, I agree.
I like Bayern, draw no bet. Best price you can find right now is -112, and that is at Bet365.
Here's the thing. United defensively is still a bottom 5 team in the Premier League.
Yep.
And that's half the season. They haven't played Liverpool yet, so it could be worse. Bayern is -120 to score in the first half. I think I will bet that and look back and laugh. And if it doesn't win, it doesn't win. But this is one of the, you could argue the best attacking team in the world when they're at their best. -120 to score against a very middling defense,
especially coming off of 5-1. I mean, the headlines I was reading coming out after that one were crazy. Is Tuchel in trouble for his job? All these different things. They need to have some type of response here because they just dropped points, and now Leverkusen just took another point lead on them in the Bundesliga. So they need a response here, whether this match means anything or not. And listen, as we've seen throughout, I mean, you mentioned the last 2 seasons. It's actually been 4 straight seasons where they have already clinched the group and they are playing a match that means nothing. They've won all 4 of those matches.
Yeah,
one of
they
them
beat
was
Moscow a couple years ago. They beat Spurs.
3 years ago was against Lokomotiv Moscow, one that literally meant absolutely nothing against a nobody, and they still pounded them. So, beating United at Old Trafford is something that a lot of teams look forward to doing. So, Bayern, every which way. I might even play some alts.
Okay, that settles Group A. Let's root on our Galatasaray boys to the window. Let's move on to Group C, where things are much more simple. Inter and Real Sociedad will play for the group title. Both have already clinched spots in the round of 16. The winner of the match will win the group. If they draw, Sociedad will win the group. Benfica will play Salzburg for third. Benfica needs to win by multiple goals. if they want to get third. They are a pick 'em to do so. Let's start with Inter and Sociedad, where this is most eyes I think will be on. Inter is a minus 160 home favorite. They've taken some money here. They've moved up. These two teams have been really tricky because they've both taken turns kind of like rotating players and not really caring at times in this Champions League. Like Inter played a very rotated team against Salzburg and then played a very rotated team against Benfica. Are they going to be all in here to win this group at home? I mean, I think they should be. If you look at like who's going to be the group winners and who's going to be the second place teams, there is a huge difference in your draw probably for the next round if you win your group. So BJ, where do you see this match going down, and what are your thoughts?
Well, if I had to bet anything, I'd probably bet Sociedad +1, but I don't know if I can get there yet. So the previous match on the opening day was kind of interesting because Sociedad scored right away and just continued to dominate the match like over and over, and they were the ones creating all the chances. So after Sociedad scored, Inter took one shot up until the 86th minute. Like that's how impressive the performance was from Sociedad. And if you watch that match towards the end, they were getting gassed. Inter was just swinging in cross after cross after cross, and eventually Martinez put one in the back of the net. So this is a really, really good defense from Sociedad, and one that is capable of holding down Inter. And the thing about Inter, we've mentioned this so many times, they're such a better team when they're not the ones that need to control possession and break down low blocks and everything like that. They do it very effectively in Serie A against bottom half of the table sides. But when they're playing against good competition, they want to hand the ball to them. They want to sit in their 5-3-2, and they want to counter. That's where they're most effective. This is a situation where Sociedad, only needing a draw, is going to sit in a low block. They're one of the best defensive teams in Spain. And I think there's a great chance that they can keep them out for a full 90 minutes. Now, it's here's the funny part is okay, once Inter scores that goal, how badly does Sociedad want to go for it? Or do they just kind of potentially pack it in? I don't know if they're actually going to do that. But this match was, Sociedad dominated on XG the last time. So if I were to bet anything, it'd be Sociedad +1. I would like a better number. We'll see. Inter's been consistently getting steamed in this Champions League. So let's see if it happens one more time and we can get a better number on Sociedad.
Yeah, I mean, the market's been weird on Inter, right? Like they took money early in the tournament, and then the last two matches, the fact they didn't play a team made a big difference. I mean, they ended up closing a pretty solid dog to Benfica, and they closed barely favored against Salzburg after they were -1 on the look-aheads away, or on the early opens. I think ultimately this is under or nothing. 2.5 is plus money. I think it should be right at 2.5. I know I bet the over in the last Inter match because Inter and Benfica were just kind of having a day at the park, and nobody played any defense. But I think if anything, like Sociedad could rotate some attackers here. I don't know that they will. Big win for them this week. They played everybody. They have been very, like I said, the scariest thing about these two teams is just that they don't really always play their best attackers. And so like, will Kubo be out there? Like, will Sadiq be out there? It's not entirely clear. Mendes as well. So this is one maybe you play a wait and see, break it down more. But yeah, from a projection standpoint and from like where I view this match, I agree with kind of like how this plays out and that this is going to be a lower event match. And I think when the stakes are high, Sociedad is at its best playing these lower event matches. And you don't want to read too much into those two matches they just played with Benfica, which were incredibly like wide open party time, at least the second match. Whereas
only
closer to the first
1.8 XG in the previous match between these two. I'm only projecting 2.1, so I'll actually probably be on the under with you. I didn't know that it was at plus money at this point when I was doing it. It was at
plus 110, so. Best number out there. I think that's high.
All right. Well, there you go. I'll be on the under with you then.
Sounds good. All right, Salzburg, Benfica. Let's make this one quick. I don't have anything here. If you bet Benfica in the last leg, I'm sorry. You had the right side. They got screwed by some really, quite frankly, bad refereeing decisions. After going up 3-0, they blew the lead. Now they're going to have some suspensions to deal with here. They did show some life, like they cared, but that was the home match, right? Now they go on the road to Salzburg. Last day, this one's the easy pass for me. I don't really know what to make of Benfica caring about this match, and who they'll play is another interesting question. So I'm going to pass here and don't really have a ton on it.
I'm gonna stick my neck out there and take Benfica, just because of the fact they actually showed like they cared against Inter. Like that's what I was looking for. It's just some sort of pulse, some sort of life And it's just really puzzling what's happened in this Champions League to them, because they've obviously been so good in the Champions League for many, many years now, and their underlying metrics in Portugal are really good. Like, they've beaten both Porto and Sporting this season pretty comfortably on XG, I might add, as well. But for whatever reason, in the Champions League, they conceded almost 15 expected goals in 5 matches. Like, it just doesn't really make much sense what is happening. And listen, the first match between these two teams, Salzburg, Benfica got a red card very, very early on, so Salzburg punked them after they were down a man. But this Salzburg team, if you look at their other 4 matches against both Sociedad and Inter, they got destroyed in all 4 of those matches. They couldn't create over 1 expected goal in any of them, conceded a combined, around 8 expected goals. So, and they're just not that great of a team in the Austrian Bundesliga right now. Like, they're only around plus a half XG differential per 90 minutes. Like, they've been consistently around +1 for many, many years now. They're just not the team that we've used to seeing in these type of Champions League matches. So, and Benfica has to go for this. They have to win by multiple goals, and I expect Salzburg to sit back. So, and even if Benfica goes up by 1, Salzburg's still going to sit in deep. So, I projected Benfica at -101. They showed a pulse against Inter, so I'm going to take them at +140.
Well, it was 1-2-3 Cancun when they went, or 1-2-3 Mykonos. When they went to Sociedad and didn't try, but they came back from vacation just in time for the last match. So to give some effort, here's an interesting thing. Like, will they care? Last 2 matches in the Portuguese Premier Liga, they had 2 really bad luck draws. Somebody tweeted me about the Benfica draw over the weekend against Ferenc. The 4 XG, they drew 1-1. And then Morense as well. Excuse my Portuguese pronunciation is not really great. Also a draw. So there is some we haven't, won in a while. We should probably care at some point. And they do have Braga away on Sunday. So they, not a great spot necessarily with that being a much more important match in the league, but certainly when you haven't won in 3 matches, you have a chance to stay in Europe. Benfica could make a run in the Europa League. It wouldn't shock me. It's going to be a tough group, tough tournament, but they're going to be in the mix. So I don't hate Benfica. Certainly, if you just compare the price from when they played the first match 3 months ago, when Benfica was a 1.5 favorite at home, you flip home field, they should be laying 3/4 of a goal. Okay, we downgraded them obviously, but how much to a pick 'em? That seems like a lot. So I see your point, 100%. All right, let's move on to the next group. Group D. We do have some stakes here. Real Madrid has already won the group. They're going to Union Berlin. Union Berlin could still get third if they beat Real Madrid and Braga loses. Could happen. The more likely and more interesting scenario, Braga visits Napoli. Braga needs to win by multiple goals to advance. They are 3 points behind. They lost the reverse fixture by a goal. They're 3 goals behind on goal difference in the group, so they need 2. They go to Napoli. They are 16-1 to qualify if you're into that. Mm-hmm. BJ, you've been betting Braga all group stage, I feel like. Why are we doing it again?
Well, honestly, that previous match against Napoli, it was actually very, very even. I mean, XG was 1.7 to 1.4. Braga had 16 box entries and expected threat of 1.9. They hit the post to potentially tie the match at the very end. And it really comes down to, when you're betting these final day Champions League matches, it's good to bet into a team that needs to win versus a big favorite that only needs a draw. Napoli, I expect them to come out pretty conservative here. I don't expect them to just go gung-ho and let's just try to blitz Braga right away and get the goal to go ahead. You kind of need to know the personality of teams. If it was Braga versus Bayern Munich, I would not be touching this one bit, even if it was even if I was getting Braga, +1.5, because we know what Bayern likes to do. But it seemed like Napoli, who is very possession-based, very slow progression going forward, and now that they're under Walter Mazzarri, who there's some questions of what the tactics are going to be. Are they going to continue to play this 4-3-3 like they did under Spalletti and Rudy Garcia, or are they going to switch to his patented 3-5-2? Either way, they're going to play very conservative in this match because all they need is a draw. They cannot win the group over Real Madrid. A draw is good enough to get forward. So it's a decent spot here to take Braga, who's been pretty good in this Champions League group stage, I might add. They had a good performance at home against Real Madrid where they won the expected goals battle. They went on the road and, that match against Real Madrid was bad, not to say the least. But again, they got a red card against Union Berlin and still beat them on XG 1.8 to 0.8. This team's pretty good. quite frankly. And I think the market is a little too high for a team that just needs a draw. So I like Braga +1. I only predicted Napoli closer to -150 here. So Braga +1, +112 is the best price you can find out there. Again, just I like betting against teams that are heavy favorites and only needing a draw.
Yeah, I took some under 3 -125. I think this total is a little bit inflated too. Braga in general has overperformed their XG dating back a while now, and there is some regression coming for this team. I think that the key here though is that this Napoli attack just isn't as good as it was last year. And we saw, Kvaratskhelia and Osimhen take this huge leap. And I know that they haven't been fully healthy this year, but if you just look at like attacking output in Serie A, it's down year over year for this team, and I think that tells an interesting story. Like they haven't run as good, sure, but in terms of creating expected goals per 90, it's down considerably, and I don't think the market's really caught on yet. I mean, if you look at what Napoli's done in this Champions League, they played 2 crazy wide open back and forth matches with Real Madrid, which like everybody plays with Real Madrid and loses to them. But the other matches in this group have not been open. If you go back and remember Braga Napoli, you talked about it. Almost all of the chances came in the last 10 minutes. It was like dead game, 1-0 for a while, 0-0 for a while, then 1-0 for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, like bang, 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 like it was 2-1, Napoli won. There were like 3 really big chances missed in stoppage time. Like it was chaos at the very end. But the majority of that match was played in a very controlled, not a ton of pressing on either end. So I really don't think there's a ton of like chaotic possession here. I think it's going to be a lot of settled possession, unless this total is too high. So under 3 -125 for me. If you are excited or interested or want to watch Real Madrid, they've conceded at least 1 expected goal in 5 of their last 6 matches. They continue to be overvalued defensively. I don't know how much they're going to care, which I think plays into the angle of going after them again with these team totals. We cashed the Napoli ones a couple weeks ago, even though we lost, the big bet on +0.5. But like Union Berlin couldn't score for months, fired Fischer. They got 3 over the weekend against Gladbach. They've been okay. They changed formations. They got out of the back 3. They've been playing a back 4 under the new manager. Like if you wanted to get creative here, I think it's not a bad idea to look at like a first half team total on our boys Union Berlin in this one. The first half team total in the +125 could be interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I know you have a disease and you love to fade Real Madrid. I don't have that disease yet, so this is a pretty easy pass for me.
Well, I'm getting more creative because I actually do enjoy watching them play attacking football. It's enjoyable to watch, but their defense is so bad, and that it's just the market's not adjusted to it yet. Eventually, they will. It's going to take them losing like 4-3 to like Valencia or something. And then the market will be like, oh, they're actually bad. They already beat Valencia 5-1. So, but again, like Valencia team total -110 to score in that match. Okay, Group B, both dead rubbers. Arsenal, your boys are your guys.
We're on the beach.
On the beach. They opened +105, and in hindsight, I probably should have bet some PSV there. Now it's a pick 'em basically. I've got nothing here. I don't know what team Arsenal will play. They're in the middle of this crazy fixture run here in the Prem with the midweek matches. Arteta didn't really give anything away, but like, there's no way Saka plays, right? There's no way Jesus plays.
They got Brighton on the weekend, so they really should rest a lot of guys here.
Yeah, and it would be, I think, for me, PSV or nothing. Definitely not playing Arsenal as a road pick 'em.
This is like the easiest pass in the board. Just there's so many better matches with bigger stakes.
And then Lyon hosts Sevilla. I've also got nothing here. Also a dead rubber.
Yeah.
Sevilla.
Over's kind of interesting.
Sevilla's
I'll
dead.
say that.
Officially.
Sevilla obviously needs to win to get to the Europa League so they can make another luck box run and get back in the Champions League. They're going to play very aggressive. They're going to play very open, which is going to leave a lot of space for Lens, who's a pretty good transition-based team. So could see some chaos back and forth there. Did project closer to 3 goals, so I'll be staring at that for a while. But if you want to play some of this match, think there's a little bit of value in the over.
All right, let's move to Wednesday. We're going to start at the top. Group of death, Group F. I'm going to run through some scenarios. Dortmund has already clinched a spot in the round of 16. They will win the group of death. They were the longest odds to do so. They will win the group with a win or a draw at home against PSG. If PSG wins the match, PSG wins the group. Dortmund goes through in second. The other match is deemed irrelevant for that, and they'll decide Europa League. If PSG gets a draw, they will advance if Milan wins or draws in the other match, but PSG could be out with a draw if Newcastle wins against Milan at home. Newcastle needs a win plus a PSG draw or loss. Milan needs a win plus a PSG loss. So there's all kinds of crazy scenarios that go into the last 3 spots being decided, also the group winner being decided. Basically, here's the reality. Dortmund and PSG are a coin flip to win the group, -110 each way. PSG is -110 to beat Dortmund, so they're -110 to win the group. PSG is -250 to advance, clearly heavily favored. Newcastle +175. Milan 14-1. Those odds courtesy of Bet365. So just like at a glance, before we get into the 2 matches, any interest in Newcastle +175? Because we're going to have a conversation. We're going to have to start a dialogue about Newcastle after this week.
Well, I am showing a little bit of value on Dortmund. I really don't want to play Dortmund. I really don't. They suck. They obviously got a red card early against Leipzig over the weekend, but their defensive performance against Leverkusen prior to that was terrible. Against Stuttgart in the German Cup, it was terrible. Just like we've been talking about, a team that just has no ball stoppers. Like, they just can't stop anybody in transition or building out of the back. Their pressing isn't that great. And PSG dominated them in the previous match. So that's the holdup here, because I do think we'll get to Newcastle in a second, which I'm kind of getting all sad on them as well. But PSG winning this group is going to be very, very important to them, because if you look at around who the first place teams are around the Champions League, it's going to be City, Barca, Atletico or Lazio, Inter or Sociedad, Real Madrid, Arsenal, Bayern Munich. The second place, there's a really big drop off there. So if they can't get a result here, not only would they maybe be out of the competition, but they are going to get paired against, again, maybe against a City or a Bayern, or have to play Arsenal. And then their hopes of winning the Champions League go down extremely significantly. So it's very, very important that PSG wins this match. Ultimately, I think they do. I'm just not laying it on the road with them right here in this type of scenario. So from a high level, Newcastle, the fixture pileup for them is really real. And the fact that they're going through this injury crisis and they have to play the same starting 11 over and over and over again, it just caught up with them against Tottenham today. Tottenham pumped them.
Caught up with them Thursday.
It caught them Thursday too. And it's the way, and obviously they've been terrible away from home. But now we're back at St. James Park, where they had a similar scenario against Manchester United, where they had a fixture pileup where they had to play Chelsea. They had to play Chelsea, and then a Champions League match against PSG in Paris. Then they came back to St. James Park, had a great performance against United, and then they go on the road twice and get pumped by Everton and Tottenham. So they're back at home. They're like one of the biggest home road split drastic teams this season. But given the way that Eddie Howe wants to play, given how physical, how intense the pressing they want to do, it's just really hard to back a team that has no depth and has to play the same starting 11 over and over and over again. So I'm actually passing on both matches. Again, I'm staring at Dortmund. I really don't want to play them. Like, they're just so bad, and I don't really understand how they were going to potentially win this group. It'll be a fun team to fade once we get to the round of 16. But it's hard to back Newcastle right now, quite honestly. There's a better spot to back them coming up in the Premier League this weekend, which we'll talk about on Wednesday.
Genuinely incredible. Well, okay. Well, I think it's interesting to put it in perspective, right? Newcastle is a bigger favorite in this match, basically the same, but a slightly bigger favorite in this match at home against Milan than they are against Fulham in the Champions League, or in the Premier League this weekend coming up. I mean, think about
Fulham's the best team in the world now, 10-0 in the last 2 matches.
Fulham has scored every shot for the last 2 months. Raul Jimenez has found the fountain of youth. We'll get to Fulham over the weekend on the Wednesday night show. But the biggest thing here is that what the hell has happened to these two defenses, Newcastle and Milan? Because Milan, I'd argue, has been worse. If you look at their defensive numbers, I mean, Frosinone got one late, could have had multiple goals in that match. They gave up over 3 XG to Atalanta, an Atalanta team that is not the Atalanta you remember. This is not your slightly older brother's Atalanta. This is like an Atalanta team that's like defense first and can't really score recently. 3.3 XG. We don't really love this Dortmund team. 2 expected goals. Fiorentina, with all of their attackers out, 1.8 expected goals. Lecce, 1.4. PSG, 1.5. Napoli, 1.7. Udinese, 1.4. Juve, 1.4. PSG, 1.3. I mean, this defense is not good anymore. And they haven't been good for months. And now the thing that made Milan's defense good was that they could sit deep and not attack with numbers. But they have to do that. They have to win. A draw does them nothing here. They get no equity out of a draw. So they have to send numbers forward. And their best attacking player is training and going to be back here, Leao. So I know I bet the under in the first match when they played. And the circumstances were very different. The number was even better. Now it's over 2.5 at -120. Crazy to me. I think this is way too low because Newcastle has injuries. Most of them are defensive. It's Botman, it's Byrne, it's Pope, and those are all significant downgrades to the guys they're playing right now. Kieran Trippier has been a disaster defensively. He's been responsible for 4 of their last 6 goals, just individual errors and not marking runners and not heading balls and tripping over his own feet. This team is defensively really flawed. I think it's really interesting to me that they've played their last away win in Europe or the Premier League was an 8-0 against Sheffield United in NFL Week 3. That's how long ago it was.
Yeah.
That was back September 24th. They had one win against the United in the Carabao Cup. They have not been good away from home, but at home, thumped Palace, beat Arsenal, beat Chelsea pretty good, beat United. Now, granted, the 2 big wins they've had since the injury crisis started are Chelsea and Man United. And like, what do we think of those teams? Not much right now. So I'm perplexed on the side here. I think the number's right. Like if it was a flat, even money, I would take Newcastle, of course, but I don't really think it's going to get there. So I'm playing the over instead. Over 2.5 goals for me. I think this total was way too low with Leao coming back. 2 bad defenses at the moment. They're not always bad, but they're both bad right now. And I think the fatigue element is impacting their press, which is impacting their defense more than it's impacting their attack. And they had almost 2 XG today. So it's not like they couldn't create chances. So over 2.5, I love that in Newcastle Milan. The PSG total to me seems about right at 3. I lean toward PSG personally, just because I think this Dortmund team is so fraudulent. PSG might be figuring some things out. They still have some defensive issues. The problem is like Füllkrug's their best striker, but they can't press with him. He can't really move. He doesn't press well, so they get kind of boxed in, and then they don't have any ball stoppers. So the whole middle of the team is just a sieve defensively, and it's not good. So I do think PSG ultimately wins this, but I will go PSG to win and Newcastle to the Europa League. I think they get like a 2-2 draw. Go through.
Quite frankly, and I mean, if Newcastle can't, like if it's very clear that they're not going to be able to make it to the Champions League, like I know this sounds terrible, but their best method of getting in the top 4 is just getting knocked out of this competition. Like given their injury crisis and the way of the style that they play, like they were so good last year where they just had 1 match to play a week because they got knocked out of the FA Cup pretty early. So they just were able to just go gung-ho. And if you look at, I know they killed United, but especially against Chelsea, it was coming off an international break where they had rest. They could get some guys back from injury, and they looked great, and they actually pressed with their 4-3-3. What's been happening is they've had to sit back at a 4-5-1, a little bit more passive type mid-block, and teams are kind of just playing right through them. And that is the issue for them. So I agree with you. I think they're probably going to sit back in that passive 4-5-1 here against Milan because I don't think they have the legs to, quite frankly, keep going up and keep pressing and playing 3 matches in a week. So, if I had to play anything, I agree with you. I'd take the over in Milan and Newcastle.
All right, let's move to Group H. Very simple. Barca's won the group. Antwerp's 4th. Porto and Shaktar are tied for 2nd right now. If Porto wins or draws, they advance. If Shaktar wins, they advance. Porto's been a little bit shaky in this group. They haven't been dominant like we thought they might be the clear 2nd. They haven't really been a clear 2nd overall. They're laying a goal here. BJ, we taking the dog?
Yes.
I'm perfect passing, but
Yep, I am taking the dog. Shaktar +1, +110. Porto won the first meeting 3-1. And it's pretty simple for Shaktar. They need to win this match by 2 or more goals to have a shot at getting to the round of 16. They're going to be behind Porto on goal differential, I believe. So they're probably going to need to win this by 3 goals, which looks pretty daunting. But if we go back to that first meeting, it was a really bad position for Shakhtar. They were under a different manager, and they were without both of their starting center backs. So it really wasn't a great scenario, even though they were playing obviously at a neutral site. But outside of that game, Shakhtar has actually been pretty decent in this group stage. Like, they've been dominant against Antwerp. They got a win against Barcelona where they were even on XG with them. Obviously, the road match against Barcelona, they kind of got pumped. Although they did look pretty good in transitional moments after they fell behind. But again, it's very important to not only know the scenario of some of these big favorites, but the personality and traits of their teams. Porto is a very passive 4-4-2 conservative type of team. They're going to hand the ball to Shakhtar, and they're going to say, I dare you to break us down over and over again. And even if Shakhtar scores, they're still going to sit in that low defensive block. And I really don't see a scenario where Porto is going to send numbers and numbers of attackers going forward. If it was a team that plays more aggressively, they'd go try to kill this thing off right away. They'd score and they'd say, all right, we're done. Like, this tie is over. But the Porto defensive numbers, although they're always really good in Portugal, this season they haven't, been as dominant as years past. I know, they're allowing 0.95 xG per 90, which I know sounds great. But in years past, they've been around 0.65, 0.7. So the defensive numbers have gone down a little bit. And Shakhtar, they've looked decent in transition in moments here. So for a match that's probably going to be very transitional based, because obviously Porto's not a team that likes to hold a lot of possession, I think it's a decent spot to back Shakhtar here. So I like them +1, +110. Again, they need to win by 3 goals. They have to go for this. And Porto, given their conservative nature, I think they're just going to sit deep and they're going to dare them to break them down. So I like Shakhtar.
Maybe I'll join the courage. If you like Shakhtar, I feel like the money line sprinkle 5-1 to advance.
Mm-hmm.
If Lieboff were here, he would tell us that we have to sprinkle Shakhtar.
5-1, no, to win by 3 goals. Oh my god.
No, they only need to win.
Oh, just to win. 5-1 to win.
Just to win. They're tied on points, so a winner advances here.
Oh, that's true.
So yeah, just to win. I think 5-1 is live. Because you're right, Porto has been a little overvalued. Not as good as I thought they'd be. They really could have had this wrapped, but Shakhtar pulled off that big upset. So now it's interesting. Royal Antwerp, Barca. Tough spot for Barca, right? They lose to Girona in a huge match today. They've got away to Valencia. They have a little bit of a depth issue right now. No real interest in laying them here. If you go back like match day 6, you can get some weird results. So like some of these matchups, we're going to get into a couple later too. You could probably take a couple small money line shots or like alternate shots, like a +0.5 on Antwerp or plus or money line, first half money line, something crazy. Just because anytime we're power rating these games, but like teams show up and they go through the motions all the time. You don't know that until the game starts. It's going to happen, but if it does happen, all of a sudden you have a very live ticket. Antwerp fits this, Red Star fits this, Young Boys. We'll just quickly touch on those matches too. Group G is dead. Red Star is out. Young Boys is out. The third place has been decided. City won the group. Leipzig is in second. City goes to Red Star. I would have been excited and interested to back Red Star anyway in this spot. But now that City doesn't have Erling Haaland, and I can't imagine they're going to really play anybody who played this week with another Prem match this weekend, and then all of the matches they've had pile up as well. They've looked really leggy and really tired this last couple matches, especially. They just had their worst performance ever under Guardiola, you could argue, on Thursday. Yep. Or Wednesday. So I think the question is do we take the Red Star alts one more time? You got them +3. Now you only get them +1.5.
Yeah, I know. I got them
at home. The thing is, Red Star, this is the European champions coming to your place. They're going to be up for it.
Oh yeah, they'll be up for it. Again, yeah, this means nothing to Red Star because
the goalie going to have to put the team on his back again for an hour.
Yeah, basically what we're going to need to happen, and Luton Town obviously went ahead against UCL today early on in the second half. Red Star did the exact same thing to them, where they kind of just sat deep, they absorbed pressure. They got one small transition attack, and they capitalized on it. And then, of course, it was one-way traffic after that in the second half against City. City ended up putting up over 4 expected goals. But again, this Red Star team, they do have some pace going forward in transition that can give City some problems. And yeah, I mean, what team is City playing out there in this match? It's interesting. You can go one of two ways, Anthony. I think it could go the way of like, hey, we have looked bad. This is a bad team. Let's get our confidence back. Like, let's play some of our regulars, or even if we just play them 60 minutes or keep our guys on the bench, and let's get a win. Let's get a dominant win, and let's get our legs back moving forward, because they're going to play Crystal Palace at home coming up this weekend. That could be one scenario. The other scenario is Pep says, all right, we're just taking a break. Like, everybody's off. Like, we're going to bring the U21s in, and let's hope that we'll just get a result here. So I think it's very important what team City actually puts out there. So I would wait until see what the lineup looks like. And if, this is one of those scenarios where you do have to be kind of on it because the market moves very, very fast once the lineups come out. So for me, I'm going to wait and see what kind of lineup City plays. And if they play a bad one, then we're going to be all over Red Star. If they play a good one and they're just trying to get their confidence back, I'm going to pass.
So last time this happened was last year. They played Alvarez instead of Haaland. They still played Grealish and Mahrez. They played Gundogan, Phil Foden, Cole Palmer. That was very much Pep kind of getting a run out for like the backup attackers that he does have. At the time, it was Palmer, and Foden hadn't really playing every match at that point. Gundogan was like the defensive midfielder. And then Laporte, Diaz, Ortega in for Ederson, Sergio Gomez, and Rico Lewis. They still smushed Sevilla at home, beat them 3-1, covered the spread. But, 8-1 is not a terrible bet. First half money line. Maybe they do that thing like they did last time.
Yeah.
Get that last minute of the first half goal and then win and then go away quietly. But yeah. All right. Moving on. I've got nothing on Leipzig Young Boys. Again, Same thing. It's like Leipzig and Young Boys. If you want to take the shot, sure. Young Boys have looked really, really bad in this tournament too. 7-1 on the road. Not great. Not enough for me. So let's move on. Last group. The group that has brought me more sadness than any group in the history of the Champions League. Pretty simple. Feyenoord has clinched third. They'll be in the Europa League. And yes, we will be betting them again. We the Nord. We live on.
Yep.
We're going to be live in that competition. Should be a fun one. They're at Celtic. I've got nothing on that match. They're playing Wednesday at 3, as are the group leaders and advancers, Atletico Madrid, boo, and Lazio, no comment. Atleti wins or draws, they win the group. If Atleti loses, they will finish second. Lazio will be a group winner, which would be hilarious.
Oh, that'd be such
I like the under 2.5 here. There's not a ton into it for me. I really don't think this Lazio attack is any good against teams that can form any semblance of a press. Lazio is a team that likes having time and space on the ball. They get it at times in Serie A, and they're pretty good at beating up on the bottom dwellers as a result. But when they go up in competition, they have created like nothing all year. And that was the case in the first match against Atleti, both matches against Feyenoord until the first match when they were down 3-0. Then they got some chances. And the second match, they created nothing except one break opportunity, scored on it. I don't think this Lazio team's any good against teams who when they go up in class, they're on the road here. The reverse fixture was a pick'em, and it was 2.5, and it was a dead nut under. Provedel scored with the last kick of the game as the goalie on a corner free kick. He came up and scored. Incredible to finish 1-1. There was less than 1.5 XG. If you just flip home field, this gets you to about where this spread is. I agree with the number. I think Atleti should be favored. I think they play this out in a very low event match. It ends 1-0, 1-1, and I think it goes under. Under 2.5, minus 110.
I will also be on that. I only project 2.27 goals for this match. So, yeah, I mean, this is a Diego Simeone special. He's going to sit deep, and he's just going to dare Lazio to break them down. And he's going to go back to his old tried and true, probably 4-4-2 or some type of very, very low defensive block. And again, like you mentioned, it's going to be another very low event type match. So yeah, I agree. I don't really see a scenario, like you said, where this becomes high event, unless Lazio somehow scores first, and then Atletico has to go for it. But again, as long as Atletico equalizes, then it's sit back deep again. So I agree with you. I'll be on under 2.5 as well.
All right, that will do it for the final Champions League episode of the group stage. Don't worry, we'll be back in February for the knockout rounds. I think the draw is coming up at the end of the month, so we're going to get draws here as well. Then we're going to dive into the matchups. Well, maybe we'll touch on them on a Premier League pod or EFL pod when we get to that point, because we should get some initial takes out there. Probably we'll have a better 2 off the rip, but it's been a fun Champions League. Hopefully we get a fun final match day. We can get like 1 or 2 moments of chaos where both matches are simultaneously going. Group A and the group of death maybe provide some chaos, but that will do it. Thanks to BJ for joining me. We'll be back on Thursday to preview the entire European slate, mostly the Premier League. Got some fun spots coming up. Newcastle at home, Villa going on the road now. So it should be a fun weekend slate. But first, yes, enjoy the Champions League. We don't get too many of these midweek slates every year. Got a bunch coming up. And thanks for listening.